"Get out," he said, and the word hung in the air, cold and definitive, just inches above the faint, quick flutter of the new life growing beneath my ribs. I stood in the hallway, my hand resting instinctively on the slight curve of my belly, staring at the man who had promised to love me until death separated us. The front door of our home was open behind him, letting in the cool, indifferent November air. It wasn't the fury in his eyes that struck me. It was the chilling, absolute emptiness. Just 3 weeks earlier, we had picked out the pale yellow paint for the nursery. We had argued playfully over names, his hand tracing circles on my stomach as we lay in the warm, familiar darkness of our bed. Now, he was standing between me and the life we had planned, his jaw set in a line of brutal finality. "I need you to leave, Sarah," David repeated, his voice low, lacking even the decency of anger. "Tonight, everything is already arranged." Arranged. The clinical precision of that word cut deeper than any insult. I glanced past him, down the polished length of the hall, and saw a suitcase, a sleek, unfamiliar piece of luggage, resting by the stairs. Next to it was a pair of stylish, high-heeled boots I had never seen before, their expensive leather glistening under the hallway light. Then I heard it. A small, feminine cough from the direction of the kitchen. The scent of David's favorite jasmine tea, which I hadn't even had the energy to brew lately, drifted out. The realization hit me with the force of a physical blow, stealing my breath. He wasn't kicking me out to punish me or to make a point. He was kicking me out because he had already moved someone else in. "David," I managed, my voice a dry, ragged whisper. "I'm 7 months pregnant. This is my home, our home." He didn't flinch. He just reached into his pocket and pulled out a small, folded legal document. "The deed is only in my name, Sarah, and I have already secured temporary accommodation for you and an initial payment. This is a separation agreement. The terms are—" "I don't care about the terms," I cried, the first wave of true shock giving way to raw, protective anger. "There's a baby coming. What kind of man does this to the mother of his child?" He looked down at his feet, shame finally flickering, but it was quickly extinguished by a cold resolve. "A man who needs a clean break, Sarah. I'll support the child financially, but the marriage is over. And I need space. She needs space." The confirmation was casual, devastating. The front door was still open. The cold air rushed in. My own heart, I realized, felt colder than the November night. I looked past him one last time, toward the soft lamplight of the living room, imagining the life that was already continuing without me. A life where my place had been erased and replaced before I even had time to fully pack a hospital bag. I took a deep, shuddering breath, my hand still fiercely guarding my stomach. I wouldn't argue. I wouldn't beg. My dignity, the last thing he hadn't managed to steal, was too precious. "Fine, David," I said, my voice surprisingly steady. "I'll go. But remember this moment. Remember the coldness of this hallway, and remember that you chose her over everything we built." I turned, stepped through the open door, and walked out into the biting night, leaving my home, my marriage, and the shattered pieces of my life behind me. My life before David's betrayal was not a fairy tale, but it was grounded in the kind of quiet, dependable love that I believed was unshakable. We met in our late 20s, working at the same mid-sized marketing firm. I was a content strategist, detail-oriented, meticulous, and pragmatic. David was the charismatic sales executive, all charm, ambition, and big-picture thinking. We were yin and yang, the perfect balance of dream and execution. We built our life slowly and intentionally. We saved up for our small, 2-story house on a quiet, tree-lined street, a home we filled with second-hand furniture and the comfortable scent of home-cooked meals. David's presence was a steady hum in my life. I remember the sound of his key turning in the lock at 6:30 p.m. every night, the comforting thump of his briefcase on the hall table, and the quick, easy kiss he'd give me while I was stirring dinner. Our relationship was defined by these small, sensory details. I loved the smell of his expensive cologne mixed with the faint musk of the office, the comforting weight of his arm thrown over me in the middle of the night, and the way he'd always leave a single, perfectly toasted piece of bread for me in the morning, knowing I always needed a simple start to my day. For 8 years, we were a unit. We navigated job changes, minor crises, and the heartbreaking failure of 2 attempts to have a child. The emotional toll of infertility had tested us, but I thought it had strengthened us. We held each other through the grief, believing that our love was bigger than our misfortune. Then, 6 months ago, just as we had decided to stop trying and focus on adoption, the impossible happened. I was pregnant. Naturally. The news came as a miracle, a genuine gift. I remember David's face when I told him, the sheer, unfiltered joy, the way his hands trembled as he touched my stomach. That day felt like the rebirth of our marriage. We were planning for two. We started clearing out the guest room, planning the baby shower, and preparing our wills. Everything felt warm, golden, and complete. But looking back now, the seeds of the betrayal must have already been planted, lurking in the shadows, waiting for the perfect moment of my physical and emotional vulnerability to sprout. The miracle of pregnancy, which I thought would secure our future, may have simply rushed David toward his fatal decision. The first subtle crack appeared about a month into my pregnancy, when the morning sickness was at its worst. It was so slow, so quiet, that I barely registered it as a warning sign. The second and third trimesters of pregnancy are supposed to be a time of gentle preparation, of nesting and quiet anticipation. For me, they were spent navigating a subtle, chilling shift in the emotional landscape of my marriage. We were outwardly the perfect expectant couple. I remember the day we assembled the crib. David meticulously followed the instructions, his brow furrowed in concentration, while I supervised, resting on a pile of blankets in the middle of the nursery floor. The scent of new wood and plastic hung in the air. When the crib was finally complete, standing stark and promising in the middle of the room, David placed his hand on the rail and looked at me with a soft, proud smile. That image, the genuine, unguarded love in his eyes, is what made the later betrayal so incomprehensible. I had seen that smile. I knew it was real once. My work life was slowing down. I was taking on fewer clients, preparing for my maternity leave. This meant I was home more, paying closer attention to the quiet rhythms of the house and, crucially, to the increasingly erratic rhythms of David. The first clue was incredibly subtle, almost dismissible, the kind of small inconsistency a tired, pregnant woman might easily overlook. It began with his phone. David had always been open, almost carelessly so, with his devices. His phone lay face up on the counter, often charging next to mine. I knew his passcode. It was our anniversary date. Around the 4th month of my pregnancy, that changed. It started with the sound. A quick, subtle click every time he picked up his phone, which he now kept face down and meticulously guarded. I'd be in the kitchen making tea, and he'd answer a work call, but before he spoke, he'd slide his finger quickly across the screen. One evening, I was doing laundry. His jacket, which smelled faintly of rain and his familiar cologne, was draped over the chair. As I lifted it, his phone slid out of the inner pocket and clattered onto the rug. I picked it up quickly to check for cracks. It was locked. I typed in our anniversary date, but the screen flashed red, incorrect passcode. I paused, holding the phone. It was such a small thing. He must have changed it accidentally or perhaps chosen a new one for work security, I rationalized. But a cold, tight knot formed in my stomach. Why wouldn't he tell me? Why the sudden secrecy around such a simple, shared detail? When he came home, I handed him the phone. "Your jacket dropped this. You changed your passcode, didn't you?" He didn't miss a beat. His smile was easy, perhaps a little too wide. "Oh yeah, honey, marketing made us update all our devices last week. Something about corporate security. I meant to tell you." He quickly typed in the new code, a string of random numbers, and showed me the screen briefly before slipping it back into his pocket. "It's a pain, but necessary," he shrugged, kissing me lightly on the forehead. The kiss felt perfunctory, a diversion. I dropped the subject, but the knot remained. That night, I realized he hadn't given me the new passcode, only demonstrated it. And he had explained the change with an external, unverified excuse. Marketing made us. The second sign was in the small, familiar landscape of our shared bedroom. I started noticing things that were meticulously unfamiliar. David began using a new, expensive-smelling shower gel. It was a sharp, citrus scent that didn't quite suit him. When I asked, he simply said his gym had switched brands and he liked the free samples. More significantly, he started washing his own dress shirts. David had always tossed his shirts into the laundry basket, trusting me to iron and fold them. Now he'd often come home and immediately take the shirt he wore that day and soak it in the laundry sink with a capful of specialized detergent. One evening, I watched him from the doorway of the laundry room. He was focused on scrubbing the collar of a crisp white shirt. "That's unusual, honey," I said, leaning against the frame. "Is the fabric delicate?" He didn't look up immediately. His shoulders tensed. "Just had a terrible lunch, Sarah. Splashed some olive oil. Didn't want it to set." "You haven't eaten olive oil in months," I pointed out gently, knowing he avoided it before big meetings. He stopped scrubbing and looked at me, his eyes suddenly sharp, almost aggressive. "Look, I'm just trying to clean my shirt, okay? Why are you analyzing my laundry? You're hormonal, Sarah. Just relax. His irritation was immediate and disproportionate. It wasn't about the olive oil. It was about the privacy he demanded around this small, wet act of concealment. The scent of the specialized detergent, chemical and sharp, suddenly smelled like a lie. I retreated, embarrassed by his tone and my own suspicion. He was right. I was pregnant, stressed, and overly sensitive. That was what I kept telling myself. But the pattern was established. Secrecy, a quick, convenient lie, and then aggressive defensiveness to shut down the inquiry. David was building walls in our marriage, and he was using my pregnancy, my perceived vulnerability and hormonal imbalance, as the excuse to keep me on the outside. The final, definitive clue before the confrontation came in the form of distance. Not physical distance, he was still sleeping in our bed, but emotional distance. He stopped touching me naturally. His hands, which had been so quick to find my back, my hand, or the gentle curve of my stomach, now stayed resolutely away. We would be watching a movie, and if I leaned my head on his shoulder, he would subtly shift his posture, making the connection feel awkward and forced. One night, the baby kicked hard, a firm, undeniable movement. I gasped with pleasure and grabbed David's hand, pulling it over the spot. "Did you feel that?" I whispered, full of motherly joy. He kept his hand there for a beat, his fingers stiff. He pulled it away almost immediately, turning over to face the wall. "Yeah," he muttered, already drifting off. "That's good. Get some sleep, Sarah." The rejection was chilling. This child, our miracle, was the anchor of our future. Yet the closer I got to motherhood, the further David retreated from me. The silence in the bedroom that night was vast and cold, filled only with the sound of my own quiet, rhythmic breathing and the flutter of the life that was now entirely, terrifyingly, only mine. I realized then that the problem wasn't my paranoia. The man who was supposed to be preparing to be a father had checked out of our life, and I needed to know why. The mounting suspicion felt like a fever I couldn't break. It made me restless, unable to fully invest in the joy of the pregnancy. I was 7 months along, and the baby had started moving with an insistent, strong pattern. A constant, beautiful reminder of the future David was actively betraying. The attempts at rationalization became a desperate inner monologue. He's stressed about the new promotion. He's worried about the financial cost of the baby. It's just male nesting, a need for space before fatherhood. I clung to these excuses like lifelines, terrified of the gaping reality they were meant to cover. The tension peaked on a Tuesday evening. I had been struggling with a persistent backache, and David had been unusually late for 3 consecutive nights. When he finally arrived, close to 9:00 p.m., the atmosphere in the house was thick with unspoken accusation. The lingering smell of my baked salmon and fresh rosemary, a meal I'd tried to make comforting and normal, seemed to mock the tension. He walked in, tossed his keys onto the table, not with the usual comforting thump, but a hard, anxious clatter. "Rough day?" I asked, trying to keep my voice light as I stood up from the sofa. The effort sent a dull throb through my lower back. "Terrible," he muttered, heading straight for the staircase. "Massive closing meeting ran late. They flew in the senior partner from New York." "You smell like you've been sitting in a smoky bar," I observed, the words slipping out before I could stop them. His usual scent of clean cologne and office air was overlaid with something sharp and metallic, faintly smoky, but not like cigarettes. It was complex, expensive, and definitely not the smell of our house. He stopped, one hand on the banister, and slowly turned to face me. His eyes were cold. "I had a celebratory cigar with the team, Sarah. It was a massive win. Are you going to interrogate me over everything now?" "No," I said, rubbing my back slowly. "I'm just tired and I'm asking you to stop lying to me." He froze. The stillness was heavy. "Lying? About what?" "About the passcode, about the olive oil on your shirt, about why you can't stand to touch me anymore. And about why your massive closing meeting resulted in you smelling like you spent the last 4 hours drinking premium scotch somewhere quiet and expensive, not a corporate office." I took a shaky step toward him. "David, please, I am 7 months pregnant. If something is wrong, tell me. Don't let me find out accidentally. Is there someone else?" He looked at me then, truly looked at me, and I saw the desperate conflict in his face. For a fleeting second, the old David, the kind, loyal man I married, wrestled with the cold, secretive one. "Don't be ridiculous, Sarah," he said, the old David losing the fight. The new David was harder, sharper. "I am under incredible pressure. This new baby, the job, the mortgage, it's all on me. I need space, not paranoid accusations. You need to focus on resting and leave me alone." He turned and bolted up the stairs, leaving me standing alone in the silent, fragrant wreckage of the dinner I had prepared. I didn't sleep that night. I moved from the bed, which felt like a cold, empty expanse, to the glider we had just bought for the nursery. I sat there in the dark, watching the streetlights cast long shadows on the yellow walls, the rhythmic creak of the chair a lonely sound. I realized then that my suspicion wasn't paranoia, it was instinct. A primal alarm, screaming that the safety of my nest and the safety of the life within me was fundamentally threatened. I knew with chilling certainty that he was cheating. The shame was suffocating, but the terror of being alone and pregnant was paralyzing. I needed proof, not for confrontation, but for survival. I needed facts to replace the terror, a roadmap for the inevitable collision. The next morning, I did the one thing I was professionally good at. I started investigating. I pulled out his old desktop computer, which he hadn't used since getting a work laptop. I knew his general patterns. He used the same passwords for everything but his phone. I checked his email, his cloud storage, and finally I found a hidden folder deep within his personal cloud drive, labeled cryptically, Q4 Marketing Strategy. Inside were not spreadsheets or campaign visuals, but photos, dozens of them. Photos of David smiling broadly, not with me, but with a woman younger than me, impeccably dressed, with vivid red hair and a dazzling, almost aggressive sense of style. She was the expensive smelling shower gel, the complicated scent on his jacket, the reason for the distant eyes. But the photos weren't just simple snapshots. They were intimate. David kissing her in front of a landmark I vaguely recognized as a luxury resort. David holding her hand in a crowded, high-end restaurant. And the very last picture, dated just 2 weeks prior, was a selfie taken in a living room I recognized instantly. Ours. In the background of the photo, behind the smiling faces of David and the red-haired woman, was a glimpse of the new gray throw blanket I had bought for our sofa and the very specific pattern of the window frame. She hadn't just been in our life, she had been in our house. While I was upstairs, struggling with a backache, or perhaps while I was at the doctor. The shock of the images was profound, but the realization that he had brought her into my sanctuary, the place where I was building our child's future, was the true, vicious climax of the betrayal. I was no longer dealing with a cheating husband. I was dealing with a cold, calculated manipulator who had planned his exit strategy by desecrating our home and my trust. The sight of her standing in my living room, confident and possessive, snapped the last thread of hope and denial. My fear evaporated, replaced by a cold, clear, protective fury. I was a mother now, and I had a battle to win. I closed the laptop gently. The screen went black, reflecting my own pale, determined face. The baby kicked, a hard, reassuring thump against my palm. I knew exactly what I had to do. The time for asking questions and begging for truth was over. Now it was time for action. I didn't cry. The discovery, those photos of David and his mistress, her face beaming in my living room, had cauterized the wound of heartbreak and replaced it with a cold, focused clarity. Grief, I knew, would come later. Right now, I was 7 months pregnant and facing homelessness. My priority was survival and the fierce protection of the life inside me. I immediately called my best friend, Lena. Lena was a partner at a small, respected law firm specializing in property and family law. She was sharp, pragmatic, and completely loyal. I didn't mince words. Lena, I need a safe place to stay tonight, and I need a lawyer tomorrow morning. My husband is cheating, and he's been bringing her to the house. I also need to know the legal standing of our home. Lena didn't offer platitudes. I'm coming to get you. Pack essentials and the financial files. Do not confront him yet. Do not let him know you know. I'll be there in 20 minutes. While I waited, I moved with a quiet, devastating efficiency. I bypassed clothes and jewelry. I went straight for the things David considered mundane, but which were, in reality, the pillars of our joint life. Financial documents, the digital and physical copies of our joint investment accounts, his company retirement plan statements, the tax returns for the last 5 years, and the mortgage papers for the house. Legal identification, my passport, birth certificate, social security card, and most crucially, the original documents related to the baby's prenatal care. The proof, I carefully copied the hidden photo folder onto a separate thumb drive labeled Baby Ultrasound Pics. My hands were steady. Each action was deliberate, governed by the cold, relentless logic of self-preservation. I wasn't looting. I was securing my future and the future of my child. When Lena arrived, I walked out to her car carrying one small duffel bag and my heavy work laptop case. "Where is David?" she asked, her voice low and concerned as I slid into her SUV. Late at his closing meeting, I replied, the sarcasm dry and brittle. I need to get back in tomorrow when he's at work. I can't leave everything. Lena looked at my stomach and then back at the dark, familiar outline of my house. You're not going back in alone, Sarah. We'll find a way. I spent the night at Lena's quiet, well-ordered apartment. It was a haven of sanity. The next morning, over coffee and a stack of legal pads, the full scope of the betrayal was revealed. The house, as David had casually mentioned during the confrontation, was only in his name. He had purchased it 2 years before we were married, a fact he had always dismissed by saying, "It's our home, Sarah. The paperwork is just cleaner this way." I had trusted him. You have no claim on the deeds, Sarah, Lena confirmed, running a highlighter over the property title. But we were married for 8 years, and the house significantly appreciated during that time. More importantly, he used marital funds to pay the mortgage and taxes, and you oversaw all the financial management and the renovations. That's commingling of assets. She tapped her pen on the desk. The key isn't the house itself right now, it's the fact that he's thrown you out, while 7 months pregnant and moved in his mistress. That's a huge moral and legal liability for him. We'll file an immediate temporary protective order demanding spousal support and exclusive occupancy of the marital home. But he moved her in, I whispered, the thought of her in my bed making my stomach clench. That's his biggest mistake, Lena said, her eyes flashing. That is abandonment of his pregnant wife. It shows premeditation, cruelty, and a complete disregard for your health and the child's well-being. We have him, Sarah. We just need to make sure we hit him where it hurts the most. Where does it hurt him, Lena? His job? His wallet and his reputation. David is all about image. We need to make this separation financially and publicly painful enough that he realizes his clean break is going to cost him his entire future. The reaction/action began immediately. The most important action was securing my physical safety and legal standing before the inevitable explosion. Step 1, the return. Lena couldn't file the papers until the afternoon. I needed more evidence and more belongings. That morning, David left for work at his usual time. Lena drove me back to our street, dropping me off 2 blocks away so her car wouldn't be seen. I walked the familiar 2 blocks, the cold air making my cheeks sting. My belly felt enormous, heavy, and conspicuous. I let myself in with my key. The silence of the house was different this time, not the cold silence of betrayal, but the heavy quiet of a crime scene. I walked straight to the laundry room. The smell of the expensive citrus shower gel was overwhelming. I looked into the hamper. Mixed in with David's clothes were a few items: a silk scarf, a lacy black top, and a pair of delicate emerald green pajamas, all things that were definitely not mine. I took a few photos, clear, well-lit evidence of her possessions in my space. Then I went upstairs. The bedroom was sickeningly clean, meticulously made. But on David's side of the bedside table, resting next to his watch, was a small, gold-framed photo I had never seen. David and the red-haired woman, arms linked, smiling. I took a picture of that too. The final piece of evidence I took was not a photo, but an item of immense sentimental value. My grandmother's antique hope chest, which held all my baby things and childhood mementos. It was heavy, but the strength of adrenaline and resolve gave me the power to slide it carefully down the stairs and into the hall. Lena's assistant arrived 10 minutes later in an unmarked rental van. They helped me load the hope chest, the rest of my clothing, the few pieces of small art I loved, and most importantly, the entire contents of the nursery closet. The yellow paint cans, the unused baby shower gifts, the boxes of diapers. I was reclaiming the promise of our child's future, piece by piece. As I closed the door for the last time, leaving the key under the mat, a small gesture of finality, I looked back at the house. It was no longer a home, it was simply a piece of property in dispute. Step 2, the filing. By 3:00 p.m., Lena had filed the paperwork. We filed for an immediate separation, an emergency motion for temporary spousal support, and a motion for exclusive use of the marital residence due to abandonment and emotional duress caused by infidelity during the late stages of pregnancy. We included the photos of the mistress's clothes and the picture from the bedside table as Exhibit A, evidence of abandonment and new occupant. Step 3, the confrontation. This was the only part I had to handle myself. David was unreachable all day. I knew he had to be served the papers, but I also needed him to hear the truth from me one last time with dignity. I sent him a single text message at 6:00 p.m. Sarah, Please come to Lena's office parking lot at 7 p.m. Do not call. I need to talk to you about the house and the baby. He replied instantly, David, what are you doing? I told you not to cause drama. I did not reply. The drama had already been caused by him. At 7:00 p.m., David's car, a pristine silver sedan, pulled into Lena's dark, empty parking lot. I stood by Lena's SUV, the chilly air cutting through my heavy coat. He got out, rushed over to me, his face tight with exasperation, not concern. Sarah, what is this? I had a plan. Why are you involving Lena? You need to calm down and listen to my legal team. I held up my hand, stopping him cold. I looked at him, not with love or hate, but with the clear, piercing assessment of a victim who has finally found her voice. I saw the photos, David. I saw the pictures of her in our living room. I saw her clothes in my laundry basket. The color drained from his face, leaving a sickly gray pallor. The look of controlled frustration shattered, replaced by raw, frantic panic. Sarah, listen to me. It's not what you think. It is exactly what I think, I interrupted, my voice low and steady. It is cowardice. It is calculated cruelty. You chose to abandon your 7 months pregnant wife and move your mistress into the home we built. That is not a clean break, David. That is monstrous. Lena's associate, a young woman named Clara, silently walked up to David, holding a thick envelope. Mr. Hayes, you have been served. David stared at the papers, then back at me, his eyes wide with disbelief and terror. This is an emergency order, David. I'm requesting spousal support and, more importantly, exclusive access to my home, which you have desecrated. I have already moved out. I am safe. But the court will be made aware tomorrow morning of the circumstances under which you threw me out, and you will be made to pay for every second of duress you have caused me and this child. He opened his mouth to protest, but I didn't give him the chance. I turned my back on him and walked toward Lena's car, not looking back at the man who was finally confronting the painful reality of his selfish actions. The fight had only just begun. The court date for the emergency motion was set for the following Monday. The intervening days were a period of intense, strategic silence on my part, contrasted sharply by David's panicked and clumsy attempts to manage the unfolding disaster. I stayed strictly at Lena's, focusing on prenatal care and preparing my legal testimony. The baby inside me, my little fighter, was a constant reminder of why I couldn't afford to crumble. David, meanwhile, discovered the true meaning of public consequence. The first domino fell at his workplace. David was a high-level sales executive. His reputation was his currency, a veneer of stability, success, and moral rectitude. Lena ensured that the court documents, which were now public record, and contained the explicit details of the abandonment of a pregnant spouse and subsequent cohabitation with a third party in the marital home, were served not just to David, but also legally to his corporate headquarters. This wasn't malicious gossip. It was a matter of record potentially affecting his future financial obligations, and thus, his ability to uphold professional integrity. The fallout was swift. David's boss, Mr. Thompson, a man obsessed with the company's squeaky clean image, called him in immediately. David called me on Friday evening, his voice shaking with a terror that transcended mere legal worry. Sarah, you have to withdraw the motion, he pleaded, the desperation raw. Thompson just put me on indefinite administrative leave. He said the company can't afford the PR risk of a senior executive being sued for cruelty and abandonment while his wife is 7 months pregnant. He said I violated the ethical conduct clause in my contract. Did you violate the ethical conduct clause, David? I asked calmly, stirring my herbal tea. No, this is personal. They can't do this. It became professional the moment you used your salary to pay the mortgage on a home you planned to illegally occupy with your mistress while abandoning your wife, David. You created a massive financial and ethical liability for yourself. You chose to make this public by bringing her into our life. I simply documented your choices. He raged then, accusing me of destroying his career, of being vindictive and heartless. I let him vent until the noise subsided. David, I said, finally cutting through his hysteria. I am going to have this baby in 2 months. I need health insurance, a safe home, and financial stability. That's my only focus. Your job is to secure that for your child. Your career problems are simply the consequence of your priorities. I hung up, feeling no triumph, only the profound sadness of watching a once good man completely lose his moral compass. The second, more personal consequence hit David and his mistress, whose name I had finally learned was Chloe in the social sphere. Our marriage hadn't been an island. We had shared friends, family, and a local community. The news traveled fast, not from me, but from the simple fact that David was no longer seen at his home, and his life was now defined by a very public court document. Our mutual friends, most of whom knew about our struggle with infertility and the joy of this unexpected pregnancy, were appalled. The narrative wasn't complex. Successful man throws pregnant wife out for younger woman. The cruelty of the act made it impossible for anyone to side with him. I received a flood of calls and texts, not gossip, but genuine offers of help, from meals and baby gear to simply listening. I accepted the kindness, knowing it was the support net I needed. My sister, Clara, not the legal assistant, who lived 2 states away, flew in immediately. She had always been protective, and her presence was a quiet, firm defiance against David's actions. The most satisfying consequence, in a purely dignified way, involved my elderly neighbor, Mrs. Henderson. She was the watchful, matriarchal figure on our street. 2 days after the motion was filed, Mrs. Henderson saw Chloe arriving at the house, her sleek luggage and high-heeled boots conspicuous in our quiet, family-oriented neighborhood. Mrs. Henderson, without confrontation, simply called the local community newsletter and alerted them to the ongoing domestic dispute at the Hayes residence, framing it as a safety and moral concern for the street. She didn't mention me by name, but she painted a clear picture of an unstable, disruptive presence affecting the neighborhood peace. The small article ran the next day, right next to the PTA meeting announcement. It didn't mention David's name, but the message was clear. The community was watching. David called me again, apoplectic. "The neighbors are talking, Sarah." Someone posted a picture of Chloe's car on the neighborhood message board. "They're calling her the occupant? This is your petty revenge. You kicked your pregnant wife out of her home and moved in the occupant, David," I repeated, letting the phrase hang in the air. "The neighbors have eyes and a moral code. You invited this scrutiny the moment you showed such a profound lack of respect for the sanctity of family." The ultimate public consequence occurred at the emergency hearing. I sat quietly next to Lena, dressed in a loose, dignified navy maternity dress. David sat across the room with his high-priced lawyer. I didn't look at him. I looked only at the judge. The judge, a formidable woman known for her strict adherence to family welfare, listened to Lena's concise presentation of the facts. Abandonment, infidelity, denial of access, financial duress, 7 months pregnant. Lena presented the photos of Chloe's possessions and the picture from the bedside table, quietly labeled as evidence of premeditated replacement. The judge slammed her gavel down. "Mr. Hayes," she stated, her voice ringing with clear authority. "Welfare of the wife and the unborn child is paramount. Your actions, as documented here, show a profound lack of regard for your marital duties and the health of your family. You are hereby ordered to vacate the marital residence immediately and secure a separate residence. You are to provide Mrs. Hayes with exclusive occupancy, immediate access to all joint accounts for the duration of the pregnancy, and a temporary spousal support payment of $8,000, payable within 48 hours. She looked straight at David, who was white with shock. The home is to be cleaned and restored to marital condition before Mrs. Hayes returns. Failure to comply with any of these terms will result in severe legal consequences, including contempt of court. You chose to make this a matter of public record, Mr. Hayes. Now, you will face the consequences of those choices." Justice was not loud or vindictive. It was a quiet, firm decree handed down from a seat of authority. I hadn't sought to ruin him, only to protect my baby. But in the eyes of the law and the community, David's attempt at a clean break had cost him his home, his reputation, and his dignity. The court order provided the necessary fortress for my healing to begin. I returned to our home 2 days later, not triumphant, but profoundly weary. David had complied, hastily and resentfully. He was gone, along with Chloe and all their immediate possessions. The house was scrubbed, the scent of jasmine tea and sharp cologne replaced by a sterile, neutral smell. The first few weeks back were defined by silence and the slow, deliberate process of reclaiming my space. I reorganized the nursery, unpacking the boxes I had salvaged, allowing the warm yellow paint to finally feel like a promise, not a painful memory. The immediate financial support was critical. It allowed me to focus entirely on the final stages of my pregnancy, free from the stress of bills and legal wrangling. My sister stayed with me for the first month, her quiet presence a steady anchor, helping me re-establish the rhythms of a single-person household, preparing for the arrival of the baby. The true resolution, however, was not legal or financial. It was emotional. I had to separate the man I married from the man who betrayed me. The man who kicked me out was a stranger, a desperate, selfish man who prioritized image over integrity. The man I loved was simply a memory, a phantom of the past that I had to mourn and let go. The divorce proceedings were straightforward, managed entirely through Lena. David, stripped of his job and facing mounting legal costs and social isolation, was suddenly a much less formidable opponent. He agreed to a fair settlement, selling the house and splitting the equity, providing long-term child support, and maintaining my health insurance until the divorce was final. He needed a clean resolution more than I needed to punish him further. My peace came from two unexpected sources. The first was the hope chest. When I finally opened my grandmother's antique chest, which I had risked so much to reclaim, I found not just my baby clothes, but a bundle of old, brittle letters tied with a frayed ribbon. They were letters between my grandmother and her own mother during the Great Depression. My grandmother had been abandoned by her husband when she was pregnant with my mother. I sat there, reading the faded ink, realizing that my story, the shock of abandonment and the burden of single motherhood, was not new. My great-grandmother's words were stoic, full of faith, and focused entirely on the future. The men may break their vows, but we women keep our promises to ourselves and to the life we carry. The realization that I was part of a strong, resilient lineage, that I was not the first woman in my family to face this kind of betrayal and survive, filled me with profound, quiet strength. I was simply the next woman in the chain, obligated to carry the torch of dignity forward. The second source of healing was the birth itself. My daughter, whom I named Alina after my resilient great-grandmother, arrived precisely on her due date. I went through the labor alone, but surrounded by my sister and a deeply compassionate nurse. It was the hardest, most singular effort of my life. When I first held Alina, this tiny, perfect being, the pain, the betrayal, and the anger of the last few months simply dissolved. Everything became simple, pure, unconditional love. David came to the hospital the next day. He stood awkwardly by the door, pale and hesitant, holding a huge, inappropriate bouquet of lilies. "She's beautiful, Sarah," he whispered, looking at the sleeping baby in the bassinet. "Yes, she is," I agreed, not looking at him, only at Alina. He shuffled his feet. I want to be a father to her, a real father." "Then you will need to learn how to be an honest man, David," I stated simply. "You threw us out, you put her first. The price of being a father now is rebuilding trust from zero. You start by accepting the divorce terms, legally and financially, without challenge, and you treat her mother with respect always." He nodded, tears finally pooling in his eyes. He reached out a trembling hand and gently touched Alina's tiny head. I watched him. He was a broken man, but for the first time in months, I saw a flicker of the decent man he used to be, humbled by the immense, non-negotiable reality of the new life before him. I allowed him 10 quiet minutes before politely asking him to leave. 6 months after the divorce was finalized, I sold the house. It was a clean break. The money was split fairly, and it gave me the seed capital to start my own consulting firm, working from home while raising Alina. I bought a small, cheerful cottage 2 towns over, a place with big windows and a garden, a place that was mine, built on my own integrity and hard work. I look at Alina now, crawling across the sunny floor of our new living room, and I feel nothing but immense peace. The betrayal was painful, but it was also a cleansing fire. It burned away the false sense of security and forced me to build a stronger foundation for myself and my daughter. The lesson wasn't about revenge, it was about empowerment. I learned that a woman's dignity, especially a mother's resolve, is the most formidable weapon she possesses. I sit here now, in my quiet, sun-filled cottage, watching Alina nap. She is 7 months old, the same age I was when her father chose to walk away and abandon us both. Yet there is no shadow of that cruelty in this room. This space is built on intention, not obligation. The experience taught me that betrayal is not just an act, but an opportunity. David's choices forced me to confront a deep, uncomfortable truth. I had outsourced my security to someone else. I believed the promise of marriage was my safety net. When he pulled that net away, I realized I had to build my own floor. I often think about the moment he told me to get out. He thought he was closing a door on an old life, but he was actually opening the door to my own empowerment. I didn't need to beg, scream, or sink to his level of malice. My power lay in my honesty, my meticulous planning, and the unwavering defense of my child. Justice, I discovered, is often the quiet result of clear, dignified action. The house, the furniture, the money, they were all temporary. They passed, but my resolve, my ability to start over, and my unbreakable bond with my daughter, that is forever. David lost his reputation and his home because he broke a sacred trust. I gained a lifetime of self-respect because I honored mine. My dearest friends, we all face moments where the foundation beneath us crumbles. The lesson is not how quickly you can rebuild the walls, but how strong you make the foundation of your own spirit. Would you have found the strength, while carrying your child, to walk away from everything you knew and fight for justice with such quiet determination? Tell me, what would have been your first move? Please share your strength and wisdom in the comments below. And if this story resonated with your own journey toward peace and self-reliance, do subscribe and support the channel.